like as a,
which is good because I'm
Very cool.
Okay.
Wow, right.
that's good.
Mhm.
Nice.
okay. Thank you. Now I have to behave. So, okay. How's everybody's mind? Have you checked today? Good. How's your mind, Debbie? You don't have to share with me how your mind is. Just making sure you're checking. So, okay, let's start just by kind of getting comfortable in your seat. Really making the intention of bringing your mind and your body. Your body's here, so you might as well ask your mind to join you. And kind of scan your body just to see if there are any spots of tension. Or if you realize your face isn't relaxed, or your jaw isn't relaxed, your shoulders aren't relaxed, try to breathe into those spots of tension, just bringing your mind to those spots and taking a few deep breaths can sometimes help you release the tension. Even sometimes just awareness that you're holding it tense can help you. We've talked a little bit about mindfulness, and one of the ways to practice mindfulness is to remember what you're doing right now. So when you get distracted, you can bring yourself back to what you're actually doing like you can spend all your time thinking about the past or the future, or you can live your life as it's happening. So you're aware you're sitting here. At some point you made the decision to come here tonight. And there probably was a reason you decided to come. So using that reason, generate an intention to use this time well. And we like to include in our intentions that you're not just doing it for yourself, but of course, whatever we do, we're hoping that we'll benefit from it. But we also want to do it with the hope that the fact that we benefit from it will ripple out to benefit those around us. Now, one of the things people asked for last week was how to apply the teachings throughout the day, not just when they're specifically thinking about it. And so I would like all of you to bring to mind something that you're working on in your mind, some inner quality or behavioral action or the way you think, the way you speak, something you're working on. And think about the reasons why you want to work on it. So now we'll start with our prayers. So we'll come back to those, that what you've been thinking about. Try to come up with ways in which to work with those things. Got so many things open, I can't tell which one's a prayer. Okay, we got it. Okay. So this is a traditional prayer that kind of,
Thank you.
welcome, welcome. This is a college group by chance. So this is a traditional, the seven limb prayer contains sort of what's recommended that you try to do in your mind when you're, before you meditate or before you listen to teachings or whatever, it's just, so it's this idea that first you want to, pay your respect to the teachings, then you want to make offerings, because that's a practice of generosity, and it's just what people do when you have a guest. So we're inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to join us here, so we're offering. That's what these water bowls are about. Then we want to clean up our act, so we do a brief confession, and then we rejoice in all our merits, both ordinary people and enlightened beings, and ourselves. But so what merit means is the positive result of doing positive actions, because everything in Buddhism revolves around cause and effect. And so just like if you plant a seed and you give it all the things it needs, sun, water, good soil, the odds go up in your favor to being able to have that seed grow. Well, the same is true with our minds, our body, our heart and mind, that it's sort of like what we practice with our body, speech, and mind, is becomes habit. So we want to reinforce the idea that we want to do things that are positive. And what does that mean? Well, positive actions are actions that lead you out of suffering. So according to the Buddha, what leads you out of suffering is cherishing others. So doing things for the benefit of others. The side effect of that is that good things will come to you. That we tend to think that we want to chase, little pleasures in life, and just in that's where happiness is, earning enough money so you can get the things that you want, and having whatever. I mean, so we chase things that actually are very temporary, that don't really give any kind of satisfactory meaning to our life, but taking care of others, helping others, cherishing others, thinking about them, being mindful of their needs is a surefire way, according to the Buddha, to have a meaningful life, that you feel at the end of your life where you feel like, oh, Yeah, I did good. And so you die with a happy mind. Maybe that won't seem important now, but it is in the future. Trust me. So then you're asking the teachings to remain until the end, it's just like at the time of the Buddha, please remain until the end of cyclic existence. Cyclic existence is this cycle of death and rebirth, death and rebirth. We're trying to get out of that cycle. Doesn't mean we cease to exist. It means we don't have to suffer through death. We don't have aging, illness, all the things that come along with being born. We just exist. And then turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings is asking for teachings. And then we dedicate the positive results of our actions and everybody else. We can dedicate everybody's good actions to the great enlightenment, which it means every sentient being becoming enlightened. And so suffering will cease to exist. So we'll say that. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. So here you just really let your imagination go wild. You just imagine the sky full of these cloud-like platters, laden with wonderful things that we have in this universe, whether it's good food, great music. I picture orchestras and rock band, whatever, all the music I like, lots of rainbows, whatever, flowers, all the flower fields in Holland when they're all in bloom, it's just, there are really some fabulous images you can conjure up. Okay, I'm talking too much. Okay, I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. Dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And I say refuge bodhicitta before the teachings. Bodhicitta is a mind that we try to generate that is the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so what you're trying to generate eventually is this uncontrived mind of bodhicitta, which then would influence every thought you have, everything you do, it just is part of that. You no longer have to think about it, make effort. It's always there. So that's what I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So if you are trying to work on having a daily practice, this, saying the refuge prayer, saying the 7 limb prayer covers all your bases, You've done the prostrations, the offerings, the confessions. So, it's a quick, easy way to make sure you do it all, but only if you're thinking about it. If you just recite the words, it doesn't do much. If you're not there yet, but you do want to implement some of the teachings you've heard, like think about, trying to adopt compassion and how to be less angry, how to be more patient, how to be more generous, how to have kind speech, how to be less, did I say less angry? Because if I did, it's probably an issue. So, it's not, you're still relying on the teachings. You're trying something out. It doesn't mean you have faith in it yet, because you haven't tried it out. You need to try it out. And then if it works for you, then you can kind of develop some confidence that this recommendation works, Eventually you might decide the whole path works for you. That's how I got in this outfit. So, so I do take refuge in the teachings, and I take refuge, the Dharma is the teachings. The Buddha just represents someone who has actualized all of the teachings, so that there's no longer any negative thoughts, negative actions, negative speech in the, in the life of the Buddha. And then the Sangha are the companions along the way who are also practicing and help you practice. So Lou, hello, Lou. Just had to say hello to, she's in South America. So. Good to see you. So one of the tools is meditation. But of course, the purpose of Buddhism is not sitting on a cushion and meditating. What's the purpose of meditation?
Calm the mind.
That's the purpose of single-pointed meditation, is to calm the mind.
To familiarize your minds.
So yeah, analytical meditation and single-pointed, is about familiarizing yourself with the teachings and with your experience. You're investigating the teachings and you're comparing it to your own personal experience, and you're kind of going, okay, maybe, you're looking into things. And then if you have some sort of experience while you're thinking about things, reflecting on things, and you have this sort of, oh, that's true, you kind of just rest your attention there for a while so that that experience of it sinks in. That's the single pointed part, and then you go back to reviewing it. So, but the purpose of it though, is so that when you get off that meditation cushion and live your life, you're able to actually follow the advice that you're learning through the meditations. You're able to actually go, oh, well, maybe I do want to develop more patience and be a little less angry or impatient or frustrated, because maybe that will benefit me. And then you have to apply that. So one of the recommendations on a daily practice is that, maybe you've picked something that you're working on as a specific thing that you feel like is causing you suffering, and you'd like to do something differently. So then you would find a teaching that's relevant to that subject. You might, and you might read a couple of the paragraphs on it or one paragraph on it, and then you would reflect on that. And then throughout the day, you'd remember that that's what you were working on. And you try to observe what's going on in your mind and observe what's happening around you, and see if even just remembering that you're working on this helps you interrupt your normal response to things. So, like, someone throw out an example.
Well, when we're driving on I-95 and somebody cuts us off, we want to be aware that we're going to get angry about it, and maybe because we've studied the teachings, we'll pause and maybe not drive ourselves nuts.
So what that involves, if you really want to implement the teachings, say that you get really angry when you drive and that you are a candidate for road rage. So then maybe you get to work or get home and you're kind of agitated because you hate driving on 95, and then you bring that home with you, or you bring it to work with you. And that kind of is not a great place to be. So you decide you really want to work on not being so, frustrated with driving. So you need to remember that. So what can you do?
Pause.
No, that's not first.
No, or recognize the trigger.
No.
No. Okay. Well,
Yeah, good. Okay. So how do you start?
Set an intention that you're.
Right.
not
So you look at you're getting in your car, right? So you sit down in your car and go, okay, that's right. I've said I'm going to work on this, you know. So that means I'm getting ready to drive. So this is my opportunity to work on this, you know. And I want to try to be more relaxed and less angry. So what's the benefit? So it's helpful to go through the benefits, and you may have gone through the benefits on your meditation cushion earlier, you know. So you have to think about what's the disadvantage of being angry or impatient, however, whatever, frustrated.
a pleasant feeling to be dealing with in your own mind.
Yeah, like don't we just love that feeling? So maybe we want to not feel that way. What else? What's another benefit?
You know, carry it into work or your family or.
Yeah, that one of the things you've noticed is that you tend to carry that energy with you, and then you're kind of cranky when you start whatever comes after the drive. You know, what's another benefit?
Set up that habit.
Well, that takes time. But yes, if you work on it, it'll become a habit. But what are some of the benefits of not being angry? Not being irrational. When anger is present, the Buddha said, wisdom isn't present. It can't be present. That anger is a distorted state of mind. It is exaggerating the negative things of something. In this case, drivers on 95, you know, and developing an aversion to them. Wisdom is not present. So as soon as we're angry, we can just think, oh, I don't have a reliable mind at this moment. So I don't trust whatever decisions I'm making in that moment. So that's when, you know, you shut up and, you know, you don't say anything. And hopefully you don't do anything with that weapon you've got between your hands as you drive. You know, so it's important to think about there's some benefits to changing this behavior. We want to think about those things, otherwise we won't be convinced it's worth it to try it. Another huge benefit is you're most likely to arrive at your destination alive and without having killed anybody else. And that's kind of a good thing. We can see that as positive, you know, or not, depending on your point of view. But and then if you know, so you start doing that. So then what happens? You know, you're kind of going, I'm ready to do this. And then you know, get towards the exit to get on the 95, and immediately someone cuts in to get ahead of you in the line to get into 95, you know, because you know, they're much more important than you are. So, you know, and so you have to go, oh, it's okay. You know, that's all right. I'm happy for them to go first. They're probably in a big hurry, you know. Their wife's probably having a baby in the hospital, you know. So, you know, you think if you just relax. And then you getting, you know, into the merge lane and nobody's letting you in. So you have to practice it again. Oh yeah, that's right. Just relax. It's okay. Just be attentive, you know. What's the worst that can happen?
Wait a few minutes.
You wait a few minutes, there's something even worse. You may have to get off because nobody lets you in. And then you have to go around that next exit.
To get off. So you gotta get in.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to get in. Other times, what you've done is you've entered the exit lane for the next exit. So, you know, whatever. Have you ever stopped at the end of the acceleration part of the merging lane because you've run out of room?
Yes.
Okay, you're still here. That's good news, you know. So it can happen. No, it's really no big deal. But we use these things as an excuse for getting upset, you know, not that we want to be upset, I mean, you know, but we rationalize if we get upset that it's someone else's fault. It's all those, you know, selfish people who wouldn't let me in. You know, it's all those bad drivers who don't know about alternate merge. You know, whatever. I have a teacher always says, I don't understand why all these other people are here. I'm driving now. The road should be empty for me. So, but it's just, so you have to go through this kind of thing of just being able, and then at the end of your trip, if you've been successful, or on the mornings that you're successful, then you might notice that you're not agitated when you arrive at your destination. And you want to notice that so that, because, that's the benefit. You get there safely and you're not agitated and you're not angry at that idiot driver, that da 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 da. So you have to, so this is what we need to do. We need to figure out things in our lives that we suspect are not helping our level of happiness, and then examine it. What are the benefits of abandoning that habit? What are the disadvantages of continuing to hold on to that idea? Then we need, so we meditated on in the morning, we've set an intention in the morning, and then we try to implement it through the day. What does that require? That requires us remembering it. So that's where mindfulness comes in. It's not forgetting the object. So you've set an intention, you don't want to forget the object of that intention. So you have little reminders on your phone, beep at you. Be kind. So you want to use kind speech all day. You can do the same thing. You're just curious if life would be different if you used kind speech. If you made an effort to actually, say things that are kind, respond to people in a kind fashion. I don't know what your issues are, so I'm just,
I've actually been on that one.
Okay. So you can do a meditation on loving kindness is one of the, and loving kindness is this recognition. It's a meditation to recognize that kindness, that all our happiness, all our good stuff, all relies on other sentient beings. When we're born, we're completely defenseless. We're relying on our caretakers, and getting food. We can't provide our own food. We can't do anything. Everything we need is dependent on others. And if you really look, you'll find that that's true your whole life. That none of us are sewing the clothes that we've got on. We're not making the fabric. We're not, building the roads or the stoplights or the, whatever. Everything in this room is a product of someone else. So we're always dependent on others. And we can choose to just see that as a product of work. Well, they have to work. Or you can see it as the kindness of people living in community. We help each other. Jobs are available in areas where people have a need. Those jobs are there because people want the product, like food. And then our food is not just dependent on, today's farmers. It's dependent on all those guys who figured it out all through time. The development of crops, seed potatoes. There are farmers that just grow seed potatoes, which help all the other potato farmers, because you have to have seed potatoes to develop a potato crop. So it's, somebody figured that out. So all the food we have depends on all these decisions being made and all these experiments happening throughout human history. And so when we have food, we can think, the kindness of all these strangers. And I'm benefiting from it. Another way we can think about it on loving kindness is thinking about how our friends and our loved ones and, the people of our lives, that we rely on them for their kindnesses, and also they rely on us for our kindnesses, And so every time you meet a person, you can think about the fact that they're benefiting their friends, their loved ones. They're not so different from you. We can look at, I mean, this is how the world works. Everybody's helping someone. So the fact that they, when you see them, instead of just seeing them as some stranger, some coworker, some, annoying person, we can remember that they're helping some friends, their loved ones, it's, we just don't know what those are, but just like they don't know what our friends do for us or what we do for our friends. So it's just a way of looking at people differently and recognizing that the human family share very common traits. They want to have friends, they have loved ones, they do things for each other. We're not alone in that. They suffer just like we suffer. They have loss, they have frustrations, they have things, falling apart in their lives, that they're dealing with, just like you. And we don't know what those are. My favorite story about that is, y'all are young, but Stephen Covey wrote a book years ago called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or 7 Habits, whatever it was. Anyway, but he tells a story where he got on this subway in New York, and this man with his 3 kids got on the subway. They were just running wild, and the man was not doing anything about it. And he was getting a little frustrated. And so finally he went to sit down next to the man, the father, and said, I've noticed that your kids are kind of out of control. Want to do anything about that? And the man said, oh, I know. Their mother just died in the hospital, and I really just don't know what to do. And of course, as soon as he said that, Stephen Covey just went, oh, totally got it. Just people, we don't know what's going on for people, and we should cut them some slack. Instead of coming from the side of nothing's happening for them. They're just selfish, out of control people, We could come from the side of there may be something going on, Doesn't mean you can let all out of control behavior just go on, but it's this, we make these assumptions, about circumstances that are just totally made up in our own minds. We have no basis for it. So we have a tendency to be very judgmental of others instead of kind. We might want to come at it from a different angle. And so this is why, meditation or just sitting quietly and reflecting on these things helps, because that gives you the ability to kind of just imagine a different story than the ones we tend to make up that are very judgmental or harsh, so that we can have us, practice it in our heads before we actually bump into people, and make judgments about them. To remind ourselves, when we think, I don't know, whatever we think, I don't know if y'all have any judgmental thoughts, but people make judgments about how people are dressed. People make judgments about, everything, just about everything. You might want to go pause, like you're saying, we pause and go, I don't know that to be true. No need to judge. No need to come to some conclusion that's totally made up in our heads just for our own entertainment. Because it's much harder to use kind speech, kind actions, if we're sitting there judging everybody. So those are ways in which we can take what we're reflecting on in meditation and try to make it, and change how we behave and how we think, and that it becomes the habit instead. And you might find that if you do that, you just feel lighter in general. You know, judging others is a very heavy habit to carry around. And usually when we're very judgmental of others, we're also very judgmental of ourselves. It's a lose-lose proposition instead of a win-win. Other types of things.
Worrying about how other people see me, like my reputation.
Worrying about what they're thinking about you. Yeah, that's a pretty common one too, you know. So that's something that when we need to work on, you know, like you could be thinking about it, you know, reflecting on, first of all, this assumption that people are thinking anything about you. Like, it's so hilarious how when we walk in a room, we think it's all about us, you know, and the odds are good that's not even remotely about you. It's, you know, everybody's in their own head with their own I'm the center of the universe mentality. And, you know, it's rare that they're actually going to be thinking about you anyway. So, you know, why worry? But we want to look at, what is that about? Do you not trust your own judgment of yourself? If you don't trust your own judgment about yourself, then you want to work on that. You want to see what kind of, how do you describe yourself in your own head? And is it at all true? Or is it mostly an exaggeration of one event, you know? We need to develop an inner confidence in our value all by ourselves. We don't need to rely on others to tell us we're valuable. You know, we also need to recognize that, you know, it's not like we're perfect. We do lousy things to others. So we, you know, there's some things we want to also be aware of, you know, that we're not always so nice. And sometimes we're impatient, and sometimes we use harsh speech, and sometimes we think harsh things, you know, so we have a realistic evaluation of ourselves, which means we're a mixed bag of good and bad, good habits, bad habits, you know, and so is everybody else. You know, we can be 100% certain that whatever we're doing, someone can do it better than we can. We can be 100% certain that whatever we're doing, somebody can do it worse than we are. I mean, that's just the nature of things. And we don't need to be able to do everything. First of all, there's not enough time. You know, there's no possible way that you could be the brain surgeon and the car mechanic and the, you know, professor and the whatever. You know, I mean, there are limits. And so we have to accept that. We have to accept that there are limits to what we can do. You know? And often we need to also make decisions about what can we quit trying to do because it's causing us not to do anything very well, you know, because we've made ourselves too busy. So management of time is often an issue for folks, you know, that their time spent with their family or their friends isn't very meaningful, or, you know, the quality is low because you're constantly thinking about all these other things you need to do, you know, and that detracts from your ability to be attentive to your friends and loved ones. And it's like when you're busy thinking about what are they thinking about me, then you're not thinking about them. You know, so you can't, you know, so you want to bring your mindfulness to how can I be, you know, what can I do for them, you know, right now, instead of worrying about what are they thinking about me. It's hard to do these things. The Buddha said reputation's the hardest thing for us to let go of. You know, it's apparently a very universal trait that we worry about what other people think. And we want people to like us or think we're whatever. I mean, it can be all sorts of things. Like if you're, a jock, you might want just people to think that you're really good at your sport, and you don't care whether they like you or not. They, you want to defeat them in the sport, whatever, so um, you know, and what does it do when we want to be the best?
Does it make you feel think about less about others and it's all about yourself?
Well, that's one thing. Yep. Self-focused. What else does it say?
So I play this game on the computer. It's like Word with Friends. It's a Scrabble game.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to beat this person. I mean, I don't know where she comes up with these words, but I'm thinking she's cheating or something. I'm not kidding.
Sure, you make it up.
I know. But it was just today because I couldn't think of a word that was a lot of points. And I just said, just enjoy the game with this person. You don't have to beat her all the time. And I was like, oh, wow, that's almost a new thought.
Yes.
I was putting away the competition thing in my mind.
And was it more pleasant?
Yes. I mean,
Yes.
because I couldn't come up with a word that was better. So I wasn't doing anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was stopping me.
So you might as well enjoy the game instead of
that's-
worrying about who wins.
Yeah.
The Tibetan monks love soccer. Now, that's a gross generalization, but many of them love soccer. They don't pick sides. It's the wildest thing to watch a soccer match with them because they're just cheering for any good play. It's very pleasant. There's no angry words like, I can't believe he did that. We're going to lose because of his action or their action, whatever. I mean, there's none of that because it's just, oh, look at that play. It's just a celebration of good actions.
Sportsmanship, right? Sportsmanship.
It's even more than sportsmanship. There's just no competition at play. It's really fascinating and it's much more pleasant to be in, Have you ever been, I mean, I remember one friend of mine, Joan, my stepmom, couldn't be she'd have to leave the room if her team it was getting close, and she'd just have to walk out. So she couldn't even watch the game. It's like, that must be a miserable way to feel. We think this sense of having to have a particular outcome, somehow that agitation is wonderful. We want to look at that. Because certainly there are things to be excited about, of course, and there is a similar feeling to excitement and agitation. But we need to see when we're falling over to attachment and aversion in these states. Like when you get really angry if some other team's going to beat your team. You can't even stand it, can't watch it. You might want to consider whether that's a healthy way to live your life. Just, Also attachment. You know how when you just crave something and you just can't drop it? That is actually not a pleasant feeling. Anybody who's ever smoked cigarettes knows the feeling when you have to go drive around in the middle of the night because you've run out of cigarettes. Just like any other addiction, it's not pleasant. So we need to notice when what we're doing is we're clinging to something, a certain outcome, a certain person, a certain whatever, and we really think our happiness depends on having it. And so to recognize that state is unpleasant. It's suffering. It's a type of suffering. Craving is suffering. It's easy to see in the attic, it's really easy to see, but it's not so easy to see when we don't label it as an addiction. But when we think, like when we get mad if, somebody else ate the last piece of chicken or something in the fridge, we've been clinging to it all day. At least I have something for dinner. It's already fixed. We do this kind of regularly in our minds. We have these stories going on, and they're what the conclusion is that if you get what you want, that will make your day. So what does that mean about when you don't get it? It's a setup for suffering. It's also a setup for feeling like you have to control outcomes. And we can't control outcomes. You can do everything right and still not get the job. You can do everything right, and it doesn't work out for you. Because that's life. So if we really are clinging to some idea that we have to have something in order to be happy or successful or, survive, whatever it is, we've cut off any avenue for seeing other possibilities. We limit our options. So we can look at those kind of questions.
It
Yep.
seems as many times as we eat that food that we saved, and if it is there, and we know we're not happy like 20 minutes later anyway. But it seems like that thought is always forgotten, that after the satisfaction,
Goes away. Yeah.
yeah, that it's gonna be the craving for something next, like.
Yeah, because that's what we're practicing. When we cling to something all day long, going, ooh, I can't wait till I get home and can have that. Whatever. We are practicing the mind of craving. Good way to make an addict out of yourself. It's also living your life in the future. Which you can't do. If you're always thinking about the future, the past, you're not living your life. You're missing it. Mm. And so these habits of living our lives in a series of rewards, is kind of not in the present. It's just, as opposed to what's good about this moment, what's good about this moment, what's good about this moment. So not resisting what's happening in this moment is a much more pleasant state than always thinking, oh, I can't wait till this moment's over. I remember when I was when I was in Australia, in a nuns community, and was listening to teachings, and there were general teachings for lay people to come in and receive teachings and things. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, how many times do I have to listen to this teaching, And then I think, okay, are you going to get up and walk out? No, I'm not going to get up and walk out. I'm a nun. I'm not. The teacher's teaching, I thought, okay, so you can either just suffer through it, clench your teeth and bear it, or you can do something else. So I chose to see just guided meditations. And guess what? I didn't know it all. Just because I'd heard it before, didn't mean I was implementing any of it, So So we want to recognize that in any moment, we have a choice whether we're going to suffer or not. Now, we can't control whether we suffer like from sunburn, or from a mosquito bite or whatever. I mean, physical pain, it's there. We can't just, pretend it's not there. But we don't have to add suffering on top of it. Oh, I shouldn't have been out in the sun so long. I should have remembered the sunscreen. I shouldn't have, all the criticism that might go on. We can skip that part so that we don't have the double whammy of suffering. These are choices that if we observe what's going on in our mind, we can start to realize we really are making a choice, as opposed to pausing and going, okay, I'm not going there with my mind. I'm not gonna, I can't change what's happened. I have learned from it. I won't do that again, kind of thing. But you don't need to beat yourself up for whatever's happening, or act as if somehow you can magically think it away, because that need to try to either find a reason why it's happening to you, is pointless. It's happening to you because it happens to everybody. People get sick, people get sunburned, people get, I mean, everything that has ever happened to you has happened to many other people. Life has complications. And hoping for a day that has none is a way to suffer. Because as soon as some difficulty comes up, oh, well, you'll have to start again tomorrow. Or you can choose not to get upset about it, which is, oh, okay, so this is what's going to happen. I've been trying to fix the disposal of my sink for days. And I actually know how, but I'm apparently not strong enough to do it at the moment. Or it's really stuck or whatever. And so I can watch my mind starting to get annoyed with this situation. It's like, I fixed it before, well, not successful now, But it's so, and that's when I just put it down and go, well, not today. And go back to whatever else I was doing. So it's just, there we can decide whether to continue agitating ourselves or accepting what's happening. So how do we do that with people? Our favorite. So your question about why is it that we forget? We give into a craving, or we finally get the, whatever it is we've been clinging to, and then, that delight lasts a few minutes, and then, we go on to the next thing. Oh, I wonder what's on TV. Oh, I wonder if I have a good book. Oh, let me call some, a friend, whatever. I mean, we just fill our days with activities trying to get some sense of pleasure. And we want to really make sure that what we're seeking has a lasting benefit, not just this temporary, very short, quick, short-lived kind of thing. It's like, when you're in school and you're studying for exams or something. I mean, you could choose to just give up and do something else, or read something more interesting, or do anything else that could be more interesting. Like, we do that at work too. We just think, oh, can't I do anything other than this? And then that delays us getting through the job. And also we suffer later because we didn't do the work we needed to do, because we were resisting what we needed to do. I'm talking too much. Demand information on specific things.
Is that a cat in the wall?
I'm sorry?
I keep hearing a cat.
Oh, there is a cat next
Okay.
door, yeah.
Sorry.
Different office.
Sorry.
Cat.
They got in the
Yeah.
I wanna
wall.
make sure I'm not losing.
I can't hear it from here, so.
I,
Yep.
yeah, I don't think you've been talking too much. I think this has been terrific. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, Bob.
Mhm.
What are y'all working on? Have we dealt with any of the issues you thought about at the beginning? Yes.
I am working on stopping complaining all the time about, doesn't, you don't even realize that you're complaining.
Yeah, it's just a habit.
Yeah.
What are the benefits to you to stop complaining?
Probably give yourself a better outlook about everything instead of looking at, like you're looking at everything through the glass is half empty instead of half full.
Yeah.
Probably more pleasant to be around as a person.
Your friends might like it. Huh?
Because you can always find something to complain about, right?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
nothing is perfect, but yeah, so. Yeah.
And complaining also makes it all about you. It's all is from our perspective.
Right.
I don't like this. I'm a big complainer. I'm very familiar with this, so it's, yeah. And so it makes it all about you. That's not a good avenue for happiness
Right. And
because things are dissatisfying, aren't they?
Right.
We never get it just right. We never get exactly what we want. And then when we complain, like you pointed out, you're sharing it with your friends.
Right, and they're like, oh, she does this.
Get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a good thing to like pause before you say something, and if it's gonna be a negative or an observation of something that's not going the way you want it.
Keep
throw
it to
out.
yourself.
Keep it to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what you have to reflect on. You kind of, like one of the things you think about are all those things. What are the benefits? And then you make the decision. Okay, for 2 hours today, I'm gonna, the next 2 hours, I'm going to not complain. You don't do that when you're alone. That's kind of not fair, but it's, but actually, if you complain in your mind, it's the same deal, So if you practice it all the time, and then you have to remember. So pausing is essential. Pausing is the first step for everything. Well, no, that's not true. Noticing that you're about to do it. And actually, the first step's really noticing you just did it.
Right.
So, and then you remind yourself, oh, that I want to try to see what it would be like not to do it because you don't know yet.
I like the fact that you're putting a time limit on it instead of saying, I'm never gonna complain.
Oh, yeah, that'll
That
work.
will never work.
No.
Right, you
No.
just give yourself a time limit and then just expand it, I guess. As
And
you get better.
and then notice how hard it is to do. Notice how there's a part of you that's just biting your tongue, whatever. I mean, you just notice, and then slowly you notice if it gets easier, and then you notice if you feel better that you haven't been complaining. Then you try to notice what does that condition give you, Like you might notice that, oh, you hear what's going on with your friends because you're giving them the opportunity to talk. You're not caught up in what you don't like about whatever it is, So you have the mental space to look at, at the people you're with. So you might have a more meaningful, interaction with others. So you need to notice these possibilities. Oh, Deepa.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
This, I'm working on my self-cherishing. So, how do I know the difference between when something happens to me? How do I know whether it's my karma or it's my mental projection somehow, or both?
It's always both. It's always our karma. Whatever happens to us, it's because we created the cause and now we're reaping the result. But it's complicated. I mean, it's like since beginningless time, since the Big Bang. I mean, You know, so we can't know exactly, and we don't really need to worry about it. What the teachings on karma teach us more than anything else is you can't blame anybody else. It's just, okay, so this is what's happening. It doesn't mean we can't go, oh, well, maybe if I had, checked my car out before I got on the road to drive 1,000 miles, I would have caught this problem with my car before, I left. Maybe not. Maybe something else will happen. And everything we experience is always from our perspective. We're always projecting from our perspective. We see everything from our point of view. And if we have a distorted point of view, it's not going to be accurate. And guess what? It's always a little distorted, right? I mean, this is why eyewitness accounts are totally useless, So everybody is looking at it from their own angle, and we really do project things that aren't there. So it's just this, it's, not really worrying about why the situation has arisen, other than, like it can be fun to kind of go, oh, well, maybe this person's yelling at me because I do a lot of yelling at others, or I used to do a lot of yelling at others. So of course I'm going to get that from others. It's what goes around comes around, if you end up with you've rounded a lot of others who complain, well, you can say, well, maybe that makes sense. And so you can shoot, and you don't like the sound of it. So maybe that's just, it helps you make the decision to try to drop that habit yourself. But we don't, we can't, only Buddhists can, know everything that's happened ever in your lives to figure out what the chain of karma is like. So that's very complicated. So we need to be able to ask, I mean, it's really important whenever we have these stories that, these thoughts about things, to kind of challenge ourselves, to ask ourselves if it's true. Do we know that to be true? Do we know somebody else was thinking bad thoughts about us? Do we know that to be true? Is our version of what's going on accurate? If we think something is the worst thing ever, can that possibly be true? No. So we can go right away, well, I'm exaggerating. And exaggeration are lies. We're telling ourselves lies. We're making up stories. And we don't necessarily feel good from it. So we really want to look at, if we have that habit, am I exaggerating the negative qualities of an event or a person? Am I exaggerating the positive qualities of a person? Like the first state syndrome. So so Deepa, what's behind wanting to know whether it's karma or mental projection?
I just walked into a situation yesterday and I was kind of just, trying to figure, where it came, it just kind of, I was just thrown into a situation and I couldn't figure what I had done to kind of be involved in it somehow. So,
yeah. You may have done nothing.
Accepting for being there.
Well, I mean, but the point is, karma doesn't ripen instantly. I mean, hasn't everybody ever been accused of something they didn't do, or yelled at for something that you didn't do? That just happens. Everybody experiences that. Why? Because the other person's projecting. I mean, that's going to happen. We don't live isolated little one unit things. No, we're interacting with others all the time. So the fact that something, I mean, the Buddha would say the fact that we had an experience with these other people, da 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 da, and you can't, it's like, wow, that came out of nowhere, just means that sometime in some past life, somewhere, you did that to them. You accused them of something that they didn't do. And they didn't let go. Getting even now. Not that it's there's no conscious thought there, but it's just habits, If you have the habit of jumping to conclusions, you're going to attract people who jump to conclusions about you. This is why developing an inner confidence of your own ability to be self-judging. That doesn't mean we don't need friends from time to time going, was I being a jerk there? We need that too. But we need to understand that everybody's projecting. And so letting ourselves get all bent out of shape because of someone else's opinion is not reliable. You change your group of friends, you're going to get a different story. So we want to develop a stability, a confidence that we can judge. And that also means that we can go, oh, that probably wasn't a good thing I just did. I'm good enough. This is what's I love. One of the things I love about Buddhism is Buddhism says, everybody can be potentially a Buddha. I mean, we all have the capacity to become a Buddha. So you're good enough. We know, there's, it's okay. We have the capacity to change. If we recognize that we have a habit that's not kind or good or helpful or anything for ourselves or others, we can change that. Think of all the different habits you've developed in your life. Well, you can choose to abandon some of those and develop new ones. We are not stuck. We may feel stuck, but we're not stuck. It is not easy to change habits because two things have to happen. You have to abandon the habits you've already got. That's hard. And then you have to start practicing the new thing that you want to make a habit out of. So that takes time. It's a process. It's not an event. So that's why this idea of setting an intention in the morning and then remembering what your intention was is you have to practice. That's what it's about. You have to you're trying to develop a habit. You have to pause every time the old habit arises and go, okay, I'm not going to act on that, and that takes practice. In all likelihood, most of the time when you're first starting, you're going to catch yourself after the fact. That's okay. We have to start somewhere. Just recognizing that you've just done something that you're trying to quit doing is how you start. And that's why having the reasons, really thinking about why is it I want to try to change this habit, that will help you in those moments of kind of going, and when you are able to recognize you're about to say something or do something you'd rather not do, when you pause, it gives you the strength in that pause to just keep your mouth shut, your hands to yourself. So, then when we're alone, we can really look at how we're thinking and practice how we'd like to think. Imagine scenarios where we could perhaps act differently, or what it might look like if we were acted differently or spoke differently. We need, like a lot of people set themselves up with expectations. And expectations block us from opportunities. Because if the expectations aren't coming true, we might miss what is coming true. And it might be good stuff. But we're so caught up in not having it go the way we expected, we can sometimes, just miss all sorts of opportunities. Questions? Arguments? So for me, probably my biggest practice is paying attention to when I get the slightest agitation. I get this little, kind of like I can feel it, it's like, I'm not comfortable. And now that I can tell when it's really tiny, it's just like, oh, okay. I can say, okay, I'm not reliable, go, slowly, just because if I don't do that, who knows what it'll ask, if it might indicate fear. And, most of us don't behave well when we're afraid, and we might be able to fix that. Okay, what's that about? And then we might realize, oh, it's just because of blah, blah, blah. And then we can the fear will go away. Or it might be because I'm walking in my car alone in the middle of the night, and I'm not parked, and I'm not liking what I hear, So, then you try to take steps to protect yourself, to make sure you're safe. You get in your car faster, you make a scene, all those things, because, you hear people who've been convicted of crimes of rape and things say, oh, they pick out people that aren't going to make a scene. They can tell, because most women don't want to make a scene. So this is, these are the, so we don't want to just write off whatever clues our bodies are giving us, but we want to become so familiar with when we feel off that we can take care of ourselves first. If we need some comforting, if we need, I'm a little afraid here. Okay, that's okay. I have to tell myself things like, oh, I'm not going to make it worse. Oh, I must have an expectation. I can see it's not going to go the way I want. That's okay. You just have, well, But that comes from being aware of what's going on in my mind all the time. And so it gives you all this information that we need in order to guide ourselves through our lives with more success. Where don't feel out of control, because, we can't control our mouth, and we can't control our actions, and we can't, that it just helps us be able to go, I can handle this. Gives us that space to figure out what we need to do in order to be able to do that. Does that make any sense? And then there are times when none of your habits are strong enough, because you're facing something that's really hard for you. And you have to be able to go, okay, this is really hard for me, and be okay. That it's okay that you're, other old habits are coming out. You have to cut yourself some slack. Be forgiving to yourself. What you think? So one way to apply things is to pick something that you want to work on. Look, find a teaching on it, ask for a teaching on it, figure out, how to, how could you approach it, and then think about it, set an intention, try to remember. All this is a process, you know? It's not like you can go, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be this really good person. And I'm going to just be kind. I'm not going to have any negative thoughts. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get impatient. I'm not going to judge others. I'm not going to, and you will fail. That's not how it works. So, you know, it's just a process. And so you have to pick some things like, you know, if complaining is really getting in your way, you're really aware that, I don't like this habit at the moment, you know, I'd like to drop it. Then you work on that. You know, if you have a problem with anger, then you probably need to work on that, you know, because that tends to destroy relationships. You know, if you have a problem with self-loathing, you might want to work on that because that interferes with all happiness. So it's just, you know, but slowly. But the key is just to go in the right direction, you know. Don't worry about how long it might take you to get there. That's not the point. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of a day, it's good to reflect on how did it go. And then you can kind of like, oh, you know, I actually remembered that I was going to work on that. I didn't work on it, but I remembered that I wanted to work on that. That's the way you know, it's like you really want to rejoice about things. And, you know, and the things, you know, where you go, yeah, I said it anyway, or did this anyway, then you want to allow yourself to feel the harm it caused you and perhaps the harm you did to someone else. You said something hurtful to someone else and you want to regret it, you know, because this is your reminder of why you want to abandon this habit. Doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you made a bad choice in that moment, you know, so you want to genuinely regret it. And if you can make amends, you know, like apologize tomorrow, you know, but we have practices in the Tibetan tradition to work on cleaning up your act so that, you know, so it doesn't create negative karma for the future. So, but the last thing is what you want to go through your day and think about all the stuff that you can feel good about. Oh, like, oh, I was kind. I did this. Yep.
Clarify the difference between regret and guilt.
Okay, so regret in this context means it's an active state where you're recognizing you did something that harmed, could be harming yourself, you know, like, oh yeah, I ate the whole chocolate cake, you know, and recognize that harm, or you recognize that you were short-tempered with someone and you know, cause them harm, you know. Guilt is when you go, I'm just an angry person. I'll never be able to change that. I'm a terrible person. I'm angry, angry, angry. That's guilt. That's packing your suitcase thinking, I can't change this. You carry it around for the rest of your life. That's not what you need to do here. We can change. You know, it's a slow process. But what it involves is going, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. You know, I don't. So that's what the advantage of regret is. Regret is actively saying, ugh, I don't like how I feel after having done that. You know, and acknowledging that you hurt someone by doing it. And that even just hurting yourself counts because you're a valuable sentient being. You know, the world's a better place when everybody feels good about what they're doing. You know? So we just regret it and we, you know, try to make a resolve to do it better tomorrow. You know, or the next time you run into that person. That can just make sense. Did you see the difference between regret and guilt in this context? Because they're used the same way in many things. But it's not this idea that you are this action. No, there's an action. You are not any action or any thought or anything. You're just a collection of a series of mental moments and physical moments. You know, we are not the same person we were when we were babies. We're not the same person we were yesterday, according to, our bodies are, keep changing, like, I don't know. If we could see with an electron, if we had electron microscope for eyes, we'd see nothing but movement and change. We don't, it's just like constant. We don't know how many cells get
Generate.
regenerated, I don't know, and lost, all of them that die. And then, so our bodies are constantly, and if you ever look at your mind, you notice how much it changes. We are not stuck. We are actually very fluid. We're just like a river. You can't see the same river twice. I find that amazing. It's different water, everything. Every time you look at a river, it's a new one. We just hold it as fixed because it's a convenient way to talk about things, communicate about things, But then when the river changes, it actually has a new route, then it's in our face that things are impermanent. And that's the good news about impermanence. It means we can change. We're not stuck. But in a society that focuses on the negative, it's so important to also notice all the good stuff. We have all sorts of good qualities. We're already generous, kind, patient, depending on the circumstances. So we want to, notice that and have that help us have that inner confidence that we have value. Yeah. And that's sort of that reliance on resultant refuge. But that's a different class, but anyway. So. Okay. So last thing we do is we dedicate. So we're taking any positive, efforts we made, the fact that we showed up because we were supposed to, and we tried to listen, whatever positive things you did, will have positive results in the future. And so instead of keeping them all to ourselves, we want to dedicate them to the benefit of others. So somewhere in here is a book. They already open. Yeah. Due to the merits
Of these virtues.
due to the merits are just those positive results, okay, of these virtuous actions, positive stuff. May we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. So why do we want to do that? Roy, tell us why we want to do that.
To benefit all sentient beings.
But why do we want to lead all sentient beings into that enlightened state?
So everybody could be happy.
So everybody can be happy and have no suffering. It's that simple. Okay. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So that's just hoping that our this attitude of wanting to do things for the benefit of others grows. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Obviously, when you're doing your own practice, you can just focus on one of these ideas. You can think about anything. You dedicate it to the well-being of someone who's sick. So the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Victorious Losang Father and Sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, he suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.